for how to approach challenges in life. It comes from a commencement address given by someone in 2011 at the University of Pennsylvania. And this is what he said. He said, "We are told to have a plan B because plan A didn't work. But I do and really believe in plan B. Because with plan B, there's always the chance that plan A might fail. If plan A is all you got, you're going to give it everything you've got. Try as hard as you can, and I promise you it will work." So what he was saying is that we should just single-mindedly focus on our primary objective without any attention to alternatives or a backup plan. And if that doesn't work, then we should try something else, and so on. That just doesn't seem like a very practical way to go through life. Right, but before we dismiss this advice entirely, let's look at the reasoning behind it. This idea of focusing all of your efforts on one thing and ignoring everything else seems a bit extreme. He used the analogy of a boxer who doesn't have a backup plan when they enter the ring. The boxer knows that they have only one shot at winning the fight. They have to give it their all in the first round. Otherwise, if they hold back even a little bit, the other person could take advantage of it and they could lose the fight. And that's true. If you don't give up everything to do one thing, you might miss out on opportunities, and that could lead to failure. However, it cuts both ways. Just because you throw all your effort into something initially doesn't mean that you won't fail. Sometimes you still need to try again and again, even if you give up everything else to pursue one goal. And sometimes, even after you've done that, it still might not work out. And in those cases, you need to be willing to pivot and try something else. So having a plan B isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you think about it, this idea of giving up everything to pursue one thing is kind of a modern take on the age-old adage, "Jack of all trades, master of none." This saying basically argues that you shouldn't try to learn too many things or have too many interests because you end up being good at nothing. Instead, you should find something that you're passionate about, and you should focus all of your efforts on mastering that one thing. But there's some truth to this idea. You can't be good at everything. Focusing on a few things allows you to specialize and become better at those things than if you were to spread yourself too thin. So maybe we should follow this advice of giving up everything else to pursue one thing when we start out. But what happens when that doesn't work? Well, we can look at some studies on this. In 2015, researchers conducted an experiment with over 400 participants. They wanted to know whether people were more successful when they had a backup plan or when they did on what. They found was that those who had a backup plan were less likely to take risks, and they were less likely to succeed in the primary goal. However, when the primary goal didn't work out, the group with the backup plan was able to recover more quickly. So what this means is that having a backup plan isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it might be a good idea to have a backup plan. So should you give up everything to pursue one thing? Well, it depends on the situation. There are some situations where you should just focus on one thing and ignore everything else. For example, if you're starting a business, it's important to get the product to market as quickly as possible. So spending too much time on the details or trying to perfect the product before you launch it could be detrimental. Or if you're applying for jobs, it's better to apply to as many jobs as possible rather than trying to tailor your resume to each individual job posting. The more you apply, the more likely you are to get an interview. And the same is true for so many other endeavors. You just need to put yourself out there, and you need to be willing to take risks. But there are also some situations where it's a good idea to have a backup plan. For example, if you're remaking a major career change, or if you're restarting a business that has a lot of competition, you want to make sure that you have something to fall back on just in case. Trying something new is scary. If we're honest with ourselves, we probably won't do it unless we absolutely have to. We tend to cling to what's familiar to us, even when it's not serving us well. So in these cases, having a backup plan could be what pushes us toward taking action. So the question isn't whether or not you should have a plan B. The real question is, how do you decide when to focus on one thing and when to have a backup plan? Well, there's no easy answer to that question, but I think it comes down to a judgment call based on the situation. How about you? Is falling forward something that you do, or is it something that you struggle with? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching.